Subscribe to Chug Chow wherever you get your podcasts or visit chugandchow.com.
All right. Welcome to Chug Chow. How are you? Great to have you here. This is the podcast that takes you on a delicious journey each and every week to America's most character-filled, off-the-beaten-path eateries and watering holes. My name is Todd Newton. And if you've been following along with the podcast or with my book, Chug Chow, the Tattooed Traveler's 50 Favorite Dive Bars and Food Joints Across America, you know we're all about discovering those special places where the food tells a story, where the atmosphere has some soul to it, and where the locals, well, they just become part of your adventure. I hope you'll subscribe to the podcast right now, wherever you're listening to us, and you can order your copy of the book, Chug Chow, on Amazon or at chugandchow.com. All right, on this episode, you and I, my friend, are rolling into LaPlace, Louisiana. Why? Well, to visit LaPlace Frostop, of course. LaPlace is a town that perfectly embodies that sweet spot between Louisiana's famous culture and small-town charm. Nestled along the east bank of the Mississippi River, about 25 miles or so west of New Orleans, LaPlace sits in the heart of St. John the Baptist Parish. This area was originally settled by German immigrants in the 1720s who called it the German Coast, and you can still taste those European influences mixed with Creole and Cajun traditions in kitchens throughout the region. But we discovered that LaPlace's history runs deeper than many folks realize. The area was actually part of a massive land grant from the French crown, and those German settlers weren't just any immigrants. They were specifically recruited to provide food for New Orleans, establishing the agricultural foundation that still defines the region today. The fertile Mississippi River soil made LaPlace a powerhouse for sugarcane production, and you'll still see those historic plantation homes dotting the landscape, serving as reminders of the complex layers of Louisiana history. The town really came into its own during the railroad boom of the late 1800s, when the Illinois Central Railroad made LaPlace a major stop. This connection brought not just commerce, but a mixing of cultures. Railroad workers from across the country settled here, adding their own flavors to the already rich cultural gumbo. LaPlace also sits at the crossroads of several major waterways, not just the Mississippi, but numerous bayous that snake through the cypress swamps. This geography made it a natural gathering place, and that tradition of bringing people together is exactly what places like Frostop have always understood. LaPlace earned its nickname the andouille capital of the world, and trust me, when you're in a state that takes its sausage that seriously, that's no small claim. What's fascinating about LaPlace today is how it's maintained its identity despite being in the shadow of New Orleans. While tourists flock to the French Quarter, locals know that some of the best food, the most authentic po' boys, the coldest beer that can be found is right there along the river parishes. The town hosts the annual Andouille Festival every October, drawing thousands who come not just for that sausage, but for the genuine Louisiana hospitality that just can't be manufactured. With about 29,000 residents at the time of this recording, LaPlace maintains that perfect balance of being big enough to have plenty of character, but small enough that everyone knows the best places to eat. And speaking of those places, let me tell you about a spot that's been serving up happiness since 1958. LaPlace Frostop. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like just another roadside stand, I beg you to think again. Frostop represents something beautifully American, the independent drive-in that became the heart of a community. The original Frostop opened its doors when Eisenhower was president, and root beer floats were the height of cool refreshment. What started as a simple concept, great burgers, delicious hand-breaded onion rings, which I promise you we'll talk more about in just a moment or two, and of course, that famous root beer served ice cold in frosted mugs, quickly became a LaPlace institution. And the giant sign, shaped like a frosty mug of root beer, became a landmark that locals used for directions and travelers remembered long after they'd moved on down Highway 51 there. These kinds of places, the independent drive-ins, the family-owned joints where 3-4 generations have worked the grill, they are the backbone of American food culture, in my opinion. Frostop represents that beautiful era when eating out wasn't about corporate efficiency. When families sat down at a table or in a booth for 4 or 5 and no one took out their smartphones and started scrolling social media. No. This is about community connection. The car hops, the made-to-order everything. The way regulars knew that they could count on the same great taste every single time and where memories were made. And what makes Frostop's story even more special is how it's remained a true family affair. When the original owner decided to pass the torch, it went to his son-in-law, Jimmy Toler. And today we're honored to have Jimmy's daughter, Terry, carrying on that tradition as the current owner. And there's something magical about businesses that stay in the family, isn't there? It's not just the recipes that get passed down. Care does too. The standards, the pride, the understanding of what makes a place truly special. Terry has managed to honor Frostop's legacy while keeping it fresh and keeping it relevant for new generations of burger lovers and root beer enthusiasts. So I tell you what, grab yourself something cold to drink, settle in, and let's welcome the woman who is keeping the Frostop tradition alive and thriving in LaPlace, Louisiana. Terry, admittedly, it's been a couple of years since I've been to LaPlace Frostop, but the history and the story and the background of this place just seems really, really cool.
I'm excited to share it with you.
We might as well begin with the first course, as they say in your business, right? Let's go back to 1958. Tell me how the whole Frostop story began.
Well, there was many Frostops in the city by that point in New Orleans, and my mom and her parents went to one in Kenner, and they thought that, that would make a good addition to LaPlace. We didn't really have much back then. And so my grandpa built the Frostop in LaPlace in 1958, but he never intended to run it. He leased it out for the first 15 years. And then in 1973, my dad said, I can do that. And so he did, and here we are all these years later.
Huh. So Grandpa was the idea guy, probably the money guy. He thought LaPlace would really benefit and enjoy having a Frostop location. So he funded it and got it up and running, then said, here, you guys deal with the day-to-day headaches of the business. That's not what I do. He sounds like an interesting guy. Can you tell me more about him?
Well, unfortunately, he passed away when I was almost 4 years old. So I had a very, very short amount of time with him. I'm actually named after, he was Morris Terry, and I'm 2 last names, Terry and Toler. He and my grandma actually had a restaurant, Terry's Restaurant, where Frostop is now in the mid 30s to early 40s. It actually burned in 41. 3 weeks later, they had it opened in another location across the airline. He actually did a lot in the New Orleans area and then here in the gambling industry, which, if we all know, there was actually no legal gambling industry in Louisiana. But that was what his main focus was. And this was just something he thought that the town needed.
Now, when you say his main focus was gambling, and gambling was illegal at the time, would it be safe to say Grandpa was a fun guy to hang around? Can we say that?
Very much so. He called everyone Mr. Brown, so he didn't have to know anyone's name. So everyone called him Mr. Brown. I've heard so many stories through the years of just people that he helped things that he did behind the scenes. If somebody needed something, he gave it to them. I just really wish I'd gotten to know him.
Yeah.
And I'm the only grandchild that he knew.
The stories you must have heard about him, huh? That's something magical about grandparents, isn't there?
I live in the house that they didn't build it, but it was their house.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Let's switch gears and focus on that, the giant sign, your frosty mug of root beer sign that sits atop the restaurant there in LaPlace. I remember from my visit really enjoying the experience, but the photo, actually there are two of them, the photos that I have on my phone are of me standing in front of that giant mug of root beer. Tell me a little bit about that. And if you've never seen it, by the way, you can see the giant mug on the restaurant's website, which is LaPlaceFroststop.com. Give me a little history on that.
Actually, it came out of New Orleans. Frostop, when it was a chain, started in Ohio. It was actually someone in New Orleans, T.W. Gaines, that had a Frostop in the city, several Frostops, and he came up with the idea and patented the mug. So it was under the sign of the revolving sign. Not all Frostops ended up with the mugs, but we're on our fourth mug at this point.
Fourth one. Man, I'm just thinking about how difficult it must be to have repairs done on that, let alone have it made. Are there still companies that manufacture signs like that?
The people that had redone our mug in 2007, because it had rusted so badly, had gone out of business. So when our mug came down for Hurricane Ida in 2021, we had to search. And we actually found someone in New Orleans that had done a lot of historic renovations of signs. And I said, that's our people. So I went with this group, A1 Signs. They completely rebuilt it.
That thing is huge. Do you, off the top of your head, do you know the measurements, the dimensions of it?
10 feet tall, about 7.5 feet wide, I think. I'd actually done the calculations. Actually, I had ChatGPT do the calculations on how much root beer it would actually hold. And we actually sell more root beer in a year than that giant mug would hold.
Wow. And let's talk about root beer for a moment, because that is what you're known for, coast to coast, that delicious root beer. And root beer has a pretty interesting history. It goes back to the 1870s. A pharmacist in Philadelphia is credited with creating, I guess, what you'd call the first commercial root beer. And he marketed it as Hires Root Tea, kind of a non-alcoholic alternative. But then he changed the name to Root Beer to appeal to the working class. You know, at the time, especially during Prohibition, when all this stuff was off limits, the word beer really, really got people's engines running. And then, of course, you had Dad's come along and Barks Root Beer come along and A&W. But you got to put Frostop right up there. Tell me about that tasty beverage you pour mugs and mugs of each day.
I find our root beer is a little more mellow than most root beers. It's more of a almost cream soda. So I think we get a lot more people that like it, that don't always like, oh, I don't like root beer, but I love your root beer.
Especially when you throw a couple scoops of vanilla ice cream in there, make yourself a float. I saw a lot of people getting it to go. You sell it to go. But to me, if you're going to get that Frostop root beer, you got to just pull up a seat at the counter or at the table and enjoy it in that mug.
Oh, the best is in the frosty mug. When you get the ice that forms, ice crystals form inside of the mug. And, oh, there's nothing better than that.
You and your family have been such a part of the LaPlace community for so long with Frostop. Let's kind of flip things around. What about your clientele? Do you see parents bringing in their kids, or grandparents even bringing in their grandkids to enjoy the same burgers and milkshakes and onion rings that they enjoyed when they were kids?
We're to great grandkids at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, you can see 4 generations sometimes will come in that, they brought their kids, and then their kids brought, kids that were in high school when I graduated from college and came back to run this full time. I see them coming in, and their kids are in high school now. It's just generations that we've been serving.
And you don't see that everywhere, do you? That's what makes restaurants like yours very special, very rare, real gems. Tell me about the town of LaPlace. You're so close to New Orleans, but I would imagine you have a real tight sense of community there.
Definitely a greater sense of community. We're kind of in between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. So if you want to go to the big town, so to speak, we're very close. We're close to the airport. We're close to everything. But LaPlace is still a small town.
It seems to me that folks in a small town, at least the folks I've had the pleasure of meeting that call smaller towns across the country home, they have a greater appreciation for places like Frostop, don't they? Maybe it's the ability to just kind of stop and smell the roses and see the beauty in the smaller things that people in the big towns might miss.
The small town people here, yes, but at the same time, you also get so many tourists that appreciate seeing something like this. People here, I think, have just grown up. It's 67 years at this point. This is just background to them. We've always been here. And they just expect it to always be here.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. There are probably people that drive by that 10-foot tall mug of root beer every day and they don't even notice it. But then you also have people who probably have no problem driving 50 miles just to do what I did and get their picture taken with it.
Oh, they do. They absolutely do.
Social media has probably been a wonderful thing for that giant mug of root beer on your roof.
It has. It is absolutely amazing, the amount of people that we don't just get from around the United States, but from around the world that will stop here. We've had people that, we had a layover in New Orleans for a couple of hours, so we came out here. I'm like, wow.
Totally worth the drive. Get out of the airport for a little bit, get your picture taken by a giant mug of root beer. Yes, yes. Hey, I wanted to tell you, Terry, when I called to see if I could get you on the podcast, your dad answered the phone and he said, let me let you talk to my daughter. She's much better at that kind of thing than I am. So Dad is still very much involved in the day-to-day business of the restaurant, huh?
My parents both still work, 85 and 81.
Oh, good for them.
They're the best free help you can get. I think the three of us together are what make it work. When you have family running a business together, that's the recipe for success.
You certainly hope so. Occasionally you will hear the family business nightmare story, but I guess those are the exceptions that prove the rule. Let's focus on the menu for a minute. You can see it at LaPlaceFroststop.com. Burgers and fried green tomatoes and the root beer and everything. Other than the root beer, what is the spotlight headlining item on your menu there?
Probably our Lotta Burger, definitely our onion rings. They're homemade. We've been on national television with them. People just stop and get an onion ring.
Onion ring? It's like a plate of those delicious onion rings, right?
It's a big order. It's about 12 or 13 onion rings, hand battered.
And what about the Lotta Burger? I remember that thing being the perfect size, a classic diner burger. Who's making these things? What can you tell me about those? The Lotta Burger.
Well, I'm in the kitchen usually, cooking up the burgers. The biggest thing about them is our mayo and mustard blend. A lot of people call it the Lotto sauce, which we never did. A lot of Frostops did it differently. Ours has always been a blend of the mayo and mustard, and I think that's what makes our burger different than most. You
also have the crawfish Monica pasta. I've never had that. That looks tasty. And the fried green tomatoes.
Fried green tomatoes. We do a po' boy or on bun with we make homemade barbecue beef and put a sausage link on that.
Ooh.
And that is delicious.
Yeah. What you're mentioning there are the types of dishes that you just want to tell people about. You know, that you want to take someone out and treat them to, or at the very least, text them, hey, you're not going to believe what I just had. This po' boy was delicious. And it's memories surrounding the food that make a place special and sustainable for, like you said, 67, 68 years. Your place is that kind of restaurant, the kind of restaurant that kids will remember as they grow into adults and want to take their kids to.
I love to watch kids in the parking lot they'll be holding a kid and the kid's pointing at the mug. And, you know, I still look at the mug the way the 2-year-old looks at the mug. I'm in awe of it. And So I guess I'm a 2-year-old kid with my mug, but
Hey, listen, as you should be. It's your 10-foot, 7-foot wide mug. You should enjoy it to the fullest. LaPlace Frostop, Terry, this has been great. And listen, you can add this to your New Orleans travel itinerary or your Baton Rouge travel itinerary. It's not a far drive.
lots to do in New Orleans. But if you have a chance to swing by here, you need to do it.
You do need to do it. Terry Toler, thank you so much for joining me here on Chug Chow. Give my best to the family. We'll see you next time we're through town, okay?
Love talking to you.
There you go. Another beautiful chapter in America's ongoing love affair with authentic family-owned eateries. LaPlace Frostop proves that some things never go out of style, like hand-breaded onion rings, ice-cold root beer in frosted mugs, and that unmistakable feeling of being welcomed like family from the moment you pull up. After all these years of hunting down the country's most character-filled spots, it's places like Frostop that remind me why I fell in love with this journey in the first place. When you find moments that make every mile worth traveling. When what you thought was just going to be a simple meal suddenly becomes a story. Now, if your taste buds are tingling and your wanderlust is growling, be sure you subscribe to the Chug Chow podcast so you never miss an episode or a story. And for more tasty destinations, I invite you to order your ideal road trip companion, that being a copy of my book, Chug and Chow, the Tattooed Traveler's 50 Favorite Dive Bars and Food Joints across America. It's available on Amazon, also available at chugandchow.com. With every copy sold, you're not just fueling your foodie adventures, you're helping provide 10 meals to families experiencing food insecurity. Thank you for that. I'm Todd Newton, and until we meet again a little further on down the road, travel safely.
Chug and Chow is produced by the host with the most LLC. All rights reserved.